Welcome to All Worn Out. I'm your host, Warren Meredith. On the show today, photographer Travis Reside. Travis is the assistant to well-known photographer Sean Sisk. He's learning very fast and learning all kinds of things working at events like CityFolk. Let's get into it now with Travis Reside. Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Worn Out. It's a podcast about music. It's a podcast about what you're passionate about. And it's a podcast about what our guest is passionate about. Today, we are very excited, lucky. Man, we are going to just have a party because we have Travis Reside on the show today.
Hello, everybody. It is Travis. How you doing?
Yes.
Excited to be on here with Warren. It's gonna be a great night.
Yeah, man. Travis, you are a photographer.
I am.
And you are a photographer's assistant. That's how I met Travis.
That is exactly how you met me.
And I was struck by your passion for photography.
Yeah.
And also, just that you were looking to learn and figure out how to get into something that I think a lot of people want to be involved with. They want to be a photographer in some capacity.
Yeah. 100%.
And I get it. Like, everyone wants to be able to take a good picture.
No, exactly. And that's the great thing about photography is no matter what, you don't have to be a photographer in the sense of as a profession to be a photographer. Anyone can expand their mind in many different mediums within photography.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But I like that you're still taking it seriously enough and that you want to learn the next level stuff. You want to learn the everything about it. And
exactly.
I remember being told, it's all light, everything, photography is all light. And it's true, I think, but that's true of life itself. And that's what's kind of weird about it.
No, exactly. And that's the thing with like photography is, there's all different kind of things out there. Everyone has their, words of saying within the field, you can't, with cameras, you can't push your ISO all the time, like super high. As concert photographers, we're working with super high ISO because we're working in like low light. And, it kind of adds a feel to those photos. So when it comes to photography, there's so much that, there is. And as a profession like myself, I went to Algonquin College for photography and I did my first year. I didn't even finish my second year. I did my first year during COVID and, I moved away for a year and I came back and that's how I actually ended up landing the job with Sean. And that's how I met you.
Okay, wicked. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I took like a photography course with film at Algonquin back when I was taking television broadcasting. So that was 05, 07.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Let's tell the folks out at home, how old were you, Travis, in 2005?
I was 4 years old.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, man.
Yeah, 2001 born.
Okay.
Born and raised in Ottawa.
So what do they call you? Do they call you a millennial or...
I am technically...
Gen X?
I'm technically a Gen Z.
Gen Z, that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm technically a Gen Z.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, born and raised Ottawa, grew up kind of all over. I lived in Winchester, like Pimlico. I grew up most of my teenagehood in Orleans. And then when I became an adult, I moved to Centertown. So now I live downtown and get to explore the city a lot more.
Let's say you were very young. What's your first musical memory?
Oh man, my first musical memory. This is going to be so funny. So when I was younger, I went to a daycare called Wellington Ward, and it was like a kind of a daycare, like a preschool almost. And we would sleep there. And we used to have these little like bed cots that we would sleep on. And I remember like when we would wake up, they would play ABBA, like the greatest hits ABBA album. And I fell in love with ABBA. We had that album in our car, growing up as a kid, we'd blast ABBA. My dad was a huge like John Cougar Mellencamp person. So music taste was just all over. I grew up listening to like everything. My dad was country. My mom was like classic rock metal, like Metallica, Black Sabbath, Pantera. I know.
And your dad was country?
My dad was like Travis Tritt, Tim McGraw.
Yeah, man.
Like
Stuff from my jam,
Stan
man, from my
Rogers,
90s memories of country, kind of 90s country.
Oh, 100%. 100% 90s, like 80s, 90s country.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So my musical kind of introduction into the world was kind of very, very open.
All right.
Yeah.
And so you were like, how old when you remembered ABBA?
ABBA, so that was like probably like 5-6 years old. I have memory from when I was pretty young, probably about like 2 or 3 years old. And I didn't really get to experience music like within myself probably till I was about 5 or 6.
Okay.
I didn't actually go to my first concert period until I was 16, 17.
Yeah.
Never got to experience live music until I was 16, 17. And that was, I went to go see Randy Bachman at, he was live at the NAC.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a really, really cool experience.
Okay, so you liked that show. It was a good performance.
It was amazing. I'm a huge The Guess Who person. I love Guess Who.
Me too.
One of the bands I kind of grew up on myself, kind of venturing into music. And, getting to hear him explain the stories of the Guess Who music, being able to perform the Guess Who music and then also, his own music under Bachman Turner Overdrive, which were really, really cool.
I mean, he's one of the legendary songwriters for Canada.
Yeah.
And
100%.
It's a shame that they can't really stand being around one another.
No, it sucks. It's like Pink Floyd.
I've seen them both live a couple times.
Yeah.
When I saw Randy last, I wasn't too thrilled with how it was. It was actually at a Leonard Skinner
Okay, that's cool.
concert and here in Ottawa. And the problem, well, at that time they had one original member.
Yeah.
In the Leonard. Now there's none.
Okay.
I feel like now they're still touring.
And it's so funny because noticed that. I was like, after I didn't know the whole experience, like not the experience, but the whole like story behind the Leonard Skinner issue. And I was like going deep into like Woodstock, and then I found out like, oh, like Leonard Skinner. And then I was like, oh, wow, the whole story of like how they lost, majority of their band within seconds.
Yes.
So it was crazy to, see that they're still touring, but like a completely different vibe. It's very different.
I think part of it was keeping it going. Like there was lots of reasons to keep it going, monetarily, of course.
Yeah.
For whoever held those rights. But I think that the musicians who bought in, they were all friends. Like a lot of them knew the members personally, or they opened for the band or whatever. They had a connection.
100%.
And then I think it was kind of about letting that rhythm guitar player know, like, yeah, you lost all these guys, but we're still here for you. The music's still here for you. And they are very powerful songs. Like
I think the thing with that is, especially around that period of time, you had like Jefferson's Airplane, and you had like the music and the soul and just what went into the lyrics of songs, in the 60s and 70s was just something that, kind of, changed a lot of views within the music scene. I think for the long run.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we have the legendary, all those people. We can look back at time periods with full understanding and say, okay, well, these people wrote these songs, people wrote these songs. How do we look at them right now in certain genres? There's big arguments about misplacements of people in the ranking charts, whatever they mean. They're not exactly. They're fictional ranking charts, but it's like, I think still people want to talk about who was the best. Oh, sorry, that was my dog.
Hey.
Anyway, so there's people who want things to be one way or another, and genres that way are. It's like I keep telling people, genres are becoming less and less of a thing.
Yeah,
it feels like artists don't want to be constricted.
Oh, it's wild. I when I explain music genres to people, especially like the music I tend to listen to. When I express the word shoegaze, I tend to express it as, very like poppy, soulful, like slow, indie style music. Whereas there's even on like, popular social platforms like TikTok, there's an artist that expresses himself as a shoegaze artist, but it's very, very much like emo rock with like very like subtle indie instruments. So music nowadays is just so it's so much more diverse than it used to be, but also not, because at the end of the day, I felt like music was, everyone tried to like fit everything into a certain genre, but music is like a medium. It's like photography, you know, at the end of the day, you know, someone might class themselves as a portrait photographer, but you know, some people will look at you and be like, okay, but what kind of portrait photographer? Are you a commercial portrait photographer? Are you an elopement portrait photographer? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As long as you put your time and effort and power into your work, which, you know, my work is photography, your work is obviously music.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
It's the people that love to listen or view your photos. They will choose you for what you put out. They don't choose you for what kind of music you make.
Interesting.
If they like your music, if they like your photos, they will go to you.
Interesting.
They don't care that it's rock or indie or country.
Yeah.
If they like your style of music, they'll listen to you.
Nice. Interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
So when does the passion for photography begin?
Passion for photography, the direct, very literal start was grade 12. But I always kind of growing up, always had a camera in my hand. You know, I look back on Facebook memories and there's always a picture with me with a camera in my hand. And it was one of those things that I was passionate about. I actually wanted to be an auto mechanic. That was my thing. Was I was going to college to be an auto mechanic, and my mom ended up gifting me a film camera when I was in grade 12.
Okay,
and she had got it on a site, on a Facebook site that was gifting stuff, and that was like a huge start because I had ended up finding like an old Canon T1i for sale in I think it was Perth for like $120.
Okay.
And I think I shot more film in that period of time of owning that camera than I did digital. And that kind of started my whole love for film and photography. You know, as someone who's 23 years old, most people my age tend to shoot specifically digital or don't really know much about film.
Yeah.
And I think that's what also opened up my mind to go take it as a profession. So I graduated high school, and when I went straight into Algonquin College for photography, and that's kind of what sparked my my passion to be a photographer as a professional. You know, it was a hobby for, you know, I'd say 6 months. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to college for photography. And I did it. Did my first year, was terrible.
Okay.
It was terrible. I was, you know, it's one of those things I can say as someone who went to school for photography. I think spending that $15,000 was the worst regret of my life, because working in the field, working with someone who knows what they're doing, going under someone's wing, it's the best thing to do.
Yeah. Apprentice, right?
100%.
And get in the field experience. And what I'll say about that for television back when I took that was all the equipment we used at Algonquin, because I'm a grad from Algonquin, and everything we used at the time, I can't speak for what they do now, but at the time, the light stands were smaller. I would find out were much smaller and lighter gear level, and everything was a little bit smaller than what I was about to encounter when I got onto the grip truck in the TV show world. And all of a sudden I was like, what? These stands are like ginormous and these lights are huge, and I have to hook it up to a ballast, and the ballast hooks up to the power. Yeah. And first the key has to make sure that the power is not going to explode and make me go backwards. And, you know, one time we were at a house that was built from the 50s doing a gardening show. And in that backyard, they didn't have it grounded, like, you know, the old school. And so we could like touch the one light stand and be like, wah, but like not like hurt us, but we would laugh about it. We'd be like, oh, isn't this funny? And then I was like, stop. Like, this is gonna like make one of our hearts stop. Like we should not mess with electricity.
I totally understand that. I remember like being at Algonquin, and we used to, for our continuous lighting, we used like these massive like tungsten lights that were like in a metal like red, and they were just so heavy and they would get so hot, and you know, you'd have to turn the lights off and let it cool down for like 10 minutes for you just to be able to put it back on the shelf. The great thing about Algonquin was our program, we did have, you know, quality cameras. We had the cameras and the lenses, you know. lenses or cameras that I wouldn't even be able to purchase now, even as a photographer. But the worst thing I felt about the program was that they didn't teach you the real world of photography. They taught you, you know, in the sense of they taught you how to do lighting, they taught you commercial work, they taught you all that stuff, but they didn't teach you the real world of like the business side of it.
Okay, like accounting, or
I wouldn't say accounting. I would say more so like how to reach out to your clients, how to communicate with your clients, all those kinds of things were things that I just felt they struggled to give to the students in the sense of the way they needed to. You know, working with Sean Sisk is I'm the assistant for Sean Sisk. He's been on your podcast here. And you know, working with him and seeing how, you know, the environment is in a real world aspect of a photographer whose Monday to Friday job is being a photographer. It's completely different in the sense of knowing how to have a structure for your business than what they teach you in school.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I think, you know, it's hard to prepare you exactly for it. I mean, again, when I was in school, I think we had good cameras. I think we had good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, here, I used a beta cam.
Oh my goodness, that's cool.
To do one of my assignments because all the other cameras were booked out.
Yeah.
So like they were like, well, we've got one last option. It's the beta, and it's like that thing is like 50 pounds. Like it is heavy. It is huge. And I took it out to the Rideau, to where the Governor General lives for like some kind of winter event, and I did a video with it.
Stick it on your shoulder.
Oh my god, yeah. And so then, other than that, it was like not mini, it was full-size DV cams.
Okay.
And they were good. Cool. They were decent. But I mean, it was only a year or two later where they were using all HD and they were little, right?
Yeah, like the digital little
the sizes had changed and everything about it, uploading wise and rendering. Like we used to compete for the tape machine, or, you know, not compete, but try and get in line for it and be like, oh God, we got to wait for for your whole tape to be taken down into this machine. And then it went into this Apple G5 and
the old G5s.
Man, those things at the time, we were like, yeah, these are the best computers in the world. Like they were so much faster than anything else we were using at the time.
They very much were. Like I remember being in elementary school. That's where like all of them just kind of got thrown to elementary schools. And you know, you had like the old like HP kind of box computers, and then you had the Apple ones. And I remember like everyone would rush to go to the Apple computers in elementary school because like they were just that much faster and like and they were cool, but you know, so nostalgic. You know, like those are huge things. Like when it comes to media, like photography, music, anything. You know, the equipment, you know, that is very popular during that period of time, you know, as time goes on, it becomes very nostalgic within that realm of work. So it's cool to see that.
Do you have a dream or a goal to do cinematography?
Oh man. Video work is one of those things that I like applaud. I applaud everyone who can, you know, do video. I've tried video over the years. I've tried, you know, doing little things, storyboards. You know, when I was at Algonquin, they taught us how to do storyboards and how to, you know, start, you know, a video. And I think the thing with video and cinematography, my mind and the way I work, I very much work in still. I very much work in a still mind form. Whereas in terms of like video, you know, people who can compose a video, I very much like have a huge inspiration to do. I just struggle personally, like when it comes to video, getting that perfect composition. When it comes to stills, I have a lot of like street work kind of aspect to my work. I like a lot of movement. I like work that, you know, shows that there's life to it. That's the biggest thing that I enjoy. But video, I think if one day I could, you know, look into getting into video and not expressing, but exploring more into video, I totally would. I think it would be really cool.
Yeah. And like, because you like film so much, I mean, I did get a chance to work a little bit in film and it's very different than working in video. I mean, all the terminology is completely different. So I was very lost. I'd worked on several television shows, but all of a sudden I was working on a short film
Okay.
And then the terminology is different. I mean, they're going gate open,
Yeah.
this and that. They're changing the film and they're doing this handoff maneuvers. And I'm going, I don't know what's going on. I'm just doing the lighting. And again, I had good bosses that knew what they were doing. And, they would tell us, I learned so much stuff. Lighting to me became everything. Like when I was in school, I had one teacher who tried to make it apparent to us that lighting was everything. And in video, if you don't have light, because there's no true black, it's going to look horrible.
Nope. Exactly.
And so you need lots of light for video. And especially, I mean, film takes the picture as it is and it burns it beautifully. And that's why you get those beautiful sunsets and the big images that it's like those Westerns, those classic Westerns, they would not be the same at all if they'd been shot on video. Like,
no, exactly.
The whole beautiful crispiness is that film.
Take like the Budapest Hotel, for example. One of the most extraordinary like movies with it's a cinematography, like cinematic masterpiece. It's so amazing. And, those were shot on RE film camera, like video cameras. And it's so cool just to see like the color and the life and just, with good lighting, how much, even in video terms, film on photography is as well, like a very different aspect to photos. But like even video, like if you see a film on film, it's just crazy. Like a movie on film is it's beautiful.
And of course, it's the frame rate and the fact, video has the 2997.
Yeah.
And the film is down at 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
And it gives it a little bit of a smoother feel.
Yeah.
Just taking those few pictures out.
Yeah.
And that's which I find all fascinating. And this is what I think, if you're passionate about it, you dig in and you find out all the different layers to it. And it becomes a lot more than just composition.
Oh, 100%.
Which is a huge part of photography.
Yeah.
But what I found with Sean, with Sean Sisk, which I appreciate, is his ability to get he was able to get us in position. In he was composing, but not in a laid back way, in a very like specific way. He wanted me facing this way, like very angular. And
exactly.
I remember I said to him, so this is what I thought was really smart, is I said, I'm always the shortest in every band picture.
Yeah.
But Sean made me the tallest in the band picture. Just the way he positioned everybody, had them sitting down or leaning.
Yeah.
And I ended up being the tallest one in the picture.
Mm.
So, I mean, Sean's awesome, and I had a great experience with him. So I do think you're learning from someone who has figured out how to get a great image. I'm going to put Sasha out, everybody. She's barking, and even though I think my AI audio software is going to clean out all the barks, it might not. And so, what'll happen is the little, a few moments later. Okay, everybody, we are back in the saddle again. Sasha the dog is outside in the backyard. For the time being, she's happy. And we're just going to keep rolling right on. I'm sorry to Travis.
No, it's all good. There's many squirrels out there for her to play with. So.
Yeah. I was hoping she would just, give in and calm down.
I'm just too cute. She just see me at the top of the stairs,
Every time you spoke, she started barking.
I know.
Every time it was your turn to speak, she's like, ruff, ruff. Yes, I want to see Travis.
So funny.
Okay, so let's talk about your time in Ottawa. So you went to Hillcrest High School?
I went to Hillcrest High School. I grew up in Orleans and went to Hillcrest.
How was that?
I think Hillcrest was honestly probably during the period of time that I went to Hillcrest was a really good experience. We had a pretty cool principal. He was like, I remember like in the basement of the school, they had classrooms for the Muslims to pray, and then they had a classroom for the natives to smudge. And it was cool, like, and it was so cool, like our high school was just very diverse during that period of time. I struggled. I did have a hard time through high school.
A lot of people
I
do.
yeah.
Yeah, especially in the first 2 years, I find.
I think grade 11 was probably my toughest year.
Interesting.
Grade 9 was good. Grade 10, I started a job. So I was working part-time in grade 10. I was working at a hobby shop. And grade 11 was a tough year because I just was done with school. I was sleeping a lot. I wasn't really getting out of bed. And it was tough. And I remember like walking into class one day and my English teacher kind of looked at me and she was like, you still have time to get back. You have grade 12. There's still there's still time for you to, get your ass in gear. And I don't know, something kind of in that sparked me. I remember her telling that. So
That's nice. That's good.
I remember grade 12. I was working part-time. I was doing a co-op as well. And then I was also doing a dual credit course at Algonquin.
Okay.
And I was supposed to graduate high school in 6 years. I was in a program at Hillcrest. I was in the autism program there. And due to the system of how it worked, I lost a few credits within my first 2 years because of the class, the way it worked. And I was like, no, I want to graduate in 4 years. I want to graduate with my classmates. And I did it in 4 years. And I made honor roll my last year of high school. Didn't get to do it in elementary or other years of high school. And I actually got my highest mark in the class for my dual credit course at Algonquin.
Awesome.
So I was really proud of myself. That was a huge thing.
Should be.
High school was tough, but I can say that I was very proud of myself.
Yeah, you did
I graduated in the 4 years with honors. And
nice.
It was a huge like goal for me.
And so you said you're on the spectrum?
Yes, I am. I was diagnosed when I was 12 years old.
12 years old.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And how do you feel it affects you today?
It's so funny because I would say my ADHD affects me more. I haven't been medicated for it since I was 11.
Okay.
So I'm a little all over the place 99% of the time. But in terms of my autism, I think it's one of those things that, growing up, a lot of people were like, it's not a bad thing. It's a gift. There are a lot of people that are on the spectrum are gifted. And, as I love my mother. Hi, Mom. How you doing?
Yeah.
She was my biggest supporter. She very much pushed me to advocate for myself, never use my disabilities as an excuse for anything in the world, but in the sense of even as well, like gifts and stuff. I would say, the way my brain works, and how literal it is, I'm a very technical person. Working with Sean as well. Sean's very much he knows what he wants to do, but I'm like the technical brains. Like I know everything technical, sort of. So we kind of work together in the sense of, if there's something he doesn't notice, I'll like point it out and be like, that's good. Like, no, thank you. And I think, it doesn't affect me in my day-to-day life as much as one would think. I think more so it's more so a positive thing. I take being on the spectrum as a positive thing. A lot of people have a hard time, coming to terms with it. I think for me, when my mom had, told me that I was diagnosed with it, I think it was the best thing that ever happened in my life. Because then I knew that, those things within that spectrum,
okay,
I knew how to help myself. I knew what I could do in terms of like learning about myself more. Growing up, there was always one little thing I didn't know. My mom didn't know, the doctors didn't know.
Right.
So when I was finally able to be diagnosed, it was kind of like a mind open for everyone, involved.
I had a friend who was diagnosed with Tourette's and a couple other things like ADHD, etc., but not until he was like 20.
Yeah.
19 or 20.
Yeah.
And I was there going, I knew. Yeah. I knew because I was like best friends with his brother, so I always knew. Yeah. And because I got to spend time one-on-one.
No, exactly.
So I saw the tells. Yeah. I saw the little things that he was doing.
Yeah.
But I guess it just didn't, I don't know, but when he found out, I remember he was very relieved.
Yeah.
For years, he didn't know what was going on or why he felt different or whatever it might be. And so sometimes getting that explanation is a big help for your mental health.
100%.
So you can move forward and start dealing with it and understanding and giving yourself a break when you need a break and be like, okay, all right, this is like, because for me, it's anxiety, it's depression, it's things like that for me where I get knocked out of the game pretty badly, and I'll just be trying to get back out and do a basic good job again and feel good about it.
No, exactly. And that's the biggest thing, you know, especially within, you know, our fields. You know, mental health is one of the biggest things that comes along with a lot of things. You know, I feel like a lot of people within the music scene or the photography scene, be it mental health diagnosis, anything, you know, there's a lot of people that are just so close with one another, you know, that people can feel like they're accepted. People can feel like they don't have to fit in. They're just there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Have you ever seen the show there, Love on the Spectrum?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Do you like it, or do you find that it paints people with autism in a certain light?
I have a very mixed feeling about the show. Like, I totally understand the thought behind it, you know, being able to help, you know, I personally putting that out on video, like for the public, seems a bit gimmicky to me. It seems very gimmicky. I mean, it's no different than, like, you know, a lot of people, you know, people will speak about Autism Speaks, which is an American company. And, you know, they're for autism, but they're not. Like, there's a whole like lore and like backstory on Autism Speaks, on like how terrible of a company they are.
Interesting.
So I feel like, you know, when it comes to, it's no different than, you know, some of those like TLC shows that are like putting, you know, people, you know, because of their weight or their certain interests on a TV show. It's like,
what was the show? I believe there was a show called Little People, Big World.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, I get it, but like, why do we need to know the whole life of a person because of what they have? You know what I mean?
You know, what else is it? There's the one Sister Wives.
Yeah.
I mean, that show I'll tell people right now, it blew up. And what I mean by blew up is all the wives left him.
Oh, like it was a huge thing. Like, it was like a ball drop, because like they had multiple seasons. And then it just was like, oh, yep, see you later. And they all like
one after the other, they all saw the ridiculousness of his mistreatment of them, his narcissism. And I mean, so I know that casting agents, for example, it was like when reality television came out, it was Survivor back when I was, grade 6. Like, I was young, like grade 9. So I'm talking about 99.
Jersey Shore?
Before.
Yeah, no.
Talking pre-Jersey, you know, but
pre-Jersey.
And like, I'm talking about when the dude from Survivor, he looked young.
Yeah.
Now he does not look. Oh, and I look at him, I'm like, oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Like, you age with the show. Of course he did, dummy. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's way TV messes with you.
I think it's anything in general. Like, even like artists, like musicians. You know what I mean? Like, you know, the newer generation will forever listen to old music.
Okay.
But when you're like, when you go, you're like, oh, I was supposed to go shoot Steve Earle. Growing up, Steve Earle was a huge thing in my family. My dad, my brother, myself, we all loved Steve Earle. And I was supposed to go shoot him. And, you know, my dad went, and I asked him, and I was like, how was it? And he was like, it was good, but it wasn't Steve Earle. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, it wasn't you listening to the music. You could listen to the lyrics, but his performance and his voice, you know, as people get older, or like, you know, things change, you can enjoy the nostalgia of what that once was. It's hard because, you know, a lot of musicians nowadays, they're in their prime, right? A lot of musicians are younger. They're in the sense of, it depends on where you are.
Yeah.
But, you know, older, like musicians that have been around since like the 80s, 90s, even 70s, you know, that perform now, their performances are a hit or miss. It depends on who performs, right?
It's fascinating. For example, you've got great Canadian artists who performed very late into their careers, right up until they passed. And with the name right now, she's still around. She's still amazing, right? Joni Mitchell. She did a performance, and everyone
Yeah.
could feel that she has
Oh, she's
aged, and
yeah.
of course, and I mean, she's one of the all-time great Canadian
no, exactly.
songwriters. And then I'm trying to remember the other name of the fellow I'm thinking of.
Well, Gord Downey was also another like performer
Right.
who like he even at his older age before he passed, he sang his heart out.
Right.
He always sounded amazing.
Gordon Lightfoot. So
Gordon
Gordon
Lightfoot,
Lightfoot, was like 80 plus,
Yeah.
right up to the very end. 2 weeks before he passed, he was performing live,
Yeah.
traveling.
Yeah.
So
Tom Petty.
yeah, and so I think these artists, they can't stop. I mean, at least I don't think so.
No.
Not easily.
No.
And they really want to keep going. If you look at Michael Jackson,
Yeah.
I mean, he was pushing himself
Oh,
to the absolute nth degree.
I feel like he would still be performing right now.
He
if-
would be.
if he was
If he
still
could be,
alive.
he would be. You look at Celine Dion,
Yeah.
and everything, everything she's
Well,
overcoming.
poor Celine Dion. Oh
Right?
goodness, she's just,
Fascinating.
it's so sad what she's going through.
But again, she won't stop.
No.
No matter what, she's
No.
not going to stop.
No.
So you're right that the performance has changed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad in some cases when you see, for example, a Bon Jovi or a Vince Neil struggle.
Yeah.
Or somebody along those lines.
I went to the Brian Wilson's final tour when he was at TD Place,
Mhm.
and as much as it was full of tears, happiness, and sadness. Because he's between 80 and 90-year-old man. He had a stroke. He couldn't. Sometimes he would stop playing the piano, or sometimes he would have to sit and breathe. But when he was performing, he was singing. He wasn't lip singing. He was actually singing, and it was so cool to see. What he's gone through and what he has to deal with. Not even being able to keep his breath to still sing. With his own voice.
That's something that Bob Dylan really wanted his fans to understand. He wanted them to stay with him in the present and stop calling out for the hits from when he was a young man. And it's not going to happen. People connect with songs, and some songs are stronger than other songs in the force they possess. And this is a fact. And it also is a fact that that list of force can be completely different for somebody else.
100%.
Once you put that list, the next person might change these, rearrange.
Yeah.
However, I believe that the list would stay relatively similar. I do think you would see some things change.
Yeah.
But I still think you would see the greats and the legends. You would still see Freddie Mercury soaring up at the top of most
100%.
people's lists.
100%.
I still think you would see a lot of people agreeing with similarities of talent, and it's what artists give us and the songs they give us. I mean, some people, they write fantastic songs, but they're not necessarily known as a great performer live.
No, exactly.
Like, for example, I love this, this American Pie. Okay.
Yep.
It's a fantastic lyrical song,
Yep.
but there's nothing fantastic about Don McLean's performance of it.
Mm.
It's just he's
Yep.
he's performing it. It's
No,
not like
exactly.
there's anything,
Yeah.
but he's one of those people that wrote songs where if you get into the library, you're just like, oh my goodness, like they're not just writing a song, they're telling a history. They're taking like a historical snapshot of a time and a place. Again,
Exactly.
Bob was doing this all the time.
Yeah.
And I think new artists are doing it too.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of some of them. I don't like the fact that we have certain control mechanisms, but they were always there.
Yeah.
They were always there.
Yeah.
And they're probably always going to be there. People like to control things. People like to make sure their money does well.
Yeah. And that was I think I totally agree with you on that, in the sense of a lot of artists nowadays still play with a lot of back vocals. They play a backtrack when they're singing. Whereas, some people, depending on, kind of scooting back to genre or style of music, sometimes, it's normally okay. It's okay. Sometimes it doesn't really fall in. If it's a song where the artist is dancing a lot, it's a very pop, very R&B style. It's okay if you tend to play backtrack, but if you're singing metal or rock, you don't really want to hear a backtrack. You just want to feel the energy of the music being played in front of you. And that's the biggest thing is seeing bands and seeing local artists play music. It's crazy how they can walk into a venue, an hour and a half, 2 hours before, throw their stuff up on stage, the sound guy, boop, 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 and it just sounds amazing live. Whereas you see some of like these bigger, people in the sense of artists like, Kaleo, for example. Kaleo was playing at CityFolk last year. It was a great opportunity to shoot him in the sense of photos. And his playing was great and his music was great, but there was the backtrack, and there would be times where I would look at him kind of just looking down or looking at his guitar, and I'm like, there's not much energy. Like, give some stage presence. And I think that's the huge thing, especially with music, is like, if you're going to perform live, give a good stage presence.
So let's talk about getting the great picture or taking pictures concert photography wise.
Yeah,
is there any tips you can give people, or what are the big challenges?
Biggest challenges, especially when it comes to shooting, concerts, music, is lighting. Like, lighting is the biggest thing. There's a lot of people that, within the concert photography realm have their own style. You can have your own style, 100%, artist subjective, photography subjective, someone might like that person's style better than the other person's. But I think the biggest thing when it comes to concert photography is shooting the light, getting that light, that color, that vibrance, the energy into your photos. Don't shoot for the actions of the person. You can, in the sense, but use that light to fill the ambience within that photo, in the sense of, if you're going to shoot even on a day of like CityFolk, I shot Billie Ann, which was the artist that was playing on the 5th day. And she performed during the sunlight. And, you couldn't really see much of the light in behind her, but the sunlight was just unreal.
Okay.
And, she wore glasses and she had red hair or like blonde hair. So working with that light to take that picture, you would look at it and you'd be like, okay, like there's not much like backlight, but just the fullness and like the vibrance of that image because of the light within the image. It just brings a sense of like energy to a photo that's still. Do you know what I mean?
Could you see yourself doing paparazzi photos? Would you understand how to do them? Is there a talent? Do you think there's a talent to that?
I think in terms of paparazzi photos, I don't think there's within photography. I think there is, like, capturing certain moments, but like, photography in general, depending on what style you're doing, paparazzi, you're trying to capture the moment of that person, of what they're doing.
Right.
So, you have to be on time. You have to be in the right location. You have to be in the right spot. If it's a photo that you don't want the person to see you want to make sure that you're hidden.
It's a lot like bird photography.
Exactly. 100%. 100%. So at the end of the day, like, photography in general just has so many aspects to it than just
so many applications.
Taking photos, Yeah,
I was just asking because I had a music teacher, him and his wife at one point, they lived in England and they were both paparazzi photographers.
Okay.
In England. And so in their house, they had lots of pictures of like Elton John, the Queen, all different royals, different people. And John would tell me like, well, we took all these, like these are all our picks and we sold them all and this and that. And
that's wild.
So what he was saying was like, they were world-class musicians, both of them. Yeah. And I guess they used this to fund their music, right?
Yep.
And, so they were just saying that they got out of it. They got out of the business because paparazzi had changed. So they said we were in it. It was very polite, and we would like get in line. We would like wait. We'd ask permission.
Yeah.
We wouldn't put something if they didn't like it. Like, we were super kind.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, these other people came in who were cutthroat. They didn't care. They just wanted the image, and then they were cutting us out. So we just said, "That's it. We're not going to play this game." And so, they were devastated. I remember when Princess Di passed, and of course, as everybody was. And I don't like that they blame. See, people call me a conspiracy theorist person all the time, and they're right, I am.
Yeah,
but I didn't like that they're blaming paparazzi people for that crash.
No, exactly.
I was like, I really don't think so. I mean, okay, what do you say? There was a flash of light, and And then the guy's like, whoa!
Yeah.
Like, I hope not.
That's the thing, is in the sense of like, no, as a photographer, sorry, speed light flash is not enough power to blind someone to swerve off the side of a road.
You know, this is what I'm saying. Is like they were already villains. I think they were just trying to cast a villain in a villainous role.
Yeah.
And because it was so devastating and traumatic for the country and for all the fans. And listen, it was devastating for me as a kid because I was watching Saturday Night Live at the time and I was enjoying the episode, and then they cut it and they're like, we interrupt this episode for this news bulletin. You know, that ruins my night.
It's so sad, like, especially being someone the age that I am. I never got to experience any of that. I never got to experience like TV being cut in, like tornadoes. Yeah. Like, you know, like the beep, boop, like, you know, the sound, like there's a tornado coming. Cool. But like, I never got to experience like a national or like a global thing happening and just like cutting off the TV and being like, we're broadcasting to you from like, you know, wherever. It's like,
well, 9/11 was,
I was in the hospital during 9/11. So
I was in the grade 9 civics class. Yeah. And so they just wheeled in the television and plugged it in. I heard. And then we just watched the news reports and then once we were done watching the news reports, we just talked about it. And then
so wild.
We were all told that day, like by our teacher, like we needed to prepare mentally for war.
So wild.
And like, that there was going to be war, and who knew how big or how small, but this was unprecedented. When I got home that day, I was the very first time I'd ever seen the word terrorist used.
Wow.
Period. In the capacity that it was used. So I went home, my dad was in his office watching the TV, and you know, they were talking about already on the very first day, they were talking about Osama bin Laden. Yeah. And that narrative was being put out there immediately. Yeah. And talking about terrorism.
It's crazy, like, how the world changed, like, from that point, like, airports, like, guards, like, even just, like, banks and, like, you know, everything just took a complete 360, you know, that year, because it was just like, you know, it was not normal for something like that to happen within a country of, like, you know, in the sense of people that weren't from that country. So like, it's no different than like Canada, you know, if Canada, like in the early 1900s or 1800s, when Canada, like, you know, lit the White House on fire. Oh yeah. You know, that was good old days. You know, good old days, but like, you know, they wouldn't have ever used that word.
So you were around for the truckers, for example.
I was.
That was I'll tell you something.
Yep.
That matched up in many ways to anything I witnessed. I mean, I witnessed the 98 ice storm.
Yeah.
That was very nuts. And depending on where you lived, it was more nuts.
Yeah.
And like, I think we were only out 17 days.
Ottawa was probably one of the worst that got hit with that ice storm.
Yeah, well, I was out in the country and out by Chesterville, so you were in Winchester. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
and
I know where Chesterville is.
There was a lot of frozen cattle, like a lot of frozen solid cattle, and sad things like that, and a lot of twisted buildings. And so that was a very dark and time where I was in grade 5, so I'd have been like 11 years old. And I think I remember it being like awakening in my head, like, oh, like bad crap can really happen.
Yeah.
And like it can knock out everything. Like we have no phone, we have no power. No one has anything except for people with generators. Yeah. So then there was a rush for generators. But then it was, the message being put out was, let the farmers buy up the generators. They need them for the animals. So then people were like, okay, well, I don't need it. And then some neighbors were nice. You'd share Jennies, heat up the house for a little bit, at least thawed out. But we all slept in one bed. Like my mom, we put the couches together, like 2 couches that folded out upstairs. And like the dogs, the cats, like everyone was in there. And it was still cold. It was still cold.
It was scary. I remember like hearing stories from my parents and like them saying like, you know, they lived in an apartment building. And, you know, I remember them saying like it was an unreal experience.
Yeah. And so what you witnessed with the truckers, I would say what was really unprecedented about that, or something that we really don't see often as Canadians, was when they brought the horse troops out. When the cops came out on horses.
Yeah.
and did their thing.
Yeah.
That's very rare. I mean,
100%.
I can't remember seeing that for a very long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, it's rare to see people tell people like, I'm not moving my truck from the downtown.
Yeah.
That was unprecedented as well. And then the friction between people. And you witnessed COVID. You witnessed COVID.
I witnessed COVID, and I was actually going to say another thing sparking, like, you know, in the sense you said the ice storm was during 5th grade.
Yeah.
Me during 5th grade was when the gunman shot the guard who was guarding an unknown soldier, and then went into Parliament and then shot up Parliament.
What a wild day.
And I remember, like, that was, I think that, I don't know if we didn't watch it on the TV. We actually went into lockdown.
That was scary.
We went into lockdown in Orleans. So, like, this was downtown at Parliament, and I went to Trillium in Orleans off of Waters. And yeah, they put us in lockdown.
It was legit scary, right? Because he was on the loose.
Yeah,
and
he was on the loose. Like, he basically grabbed his car, drove, and got out of it and just did his walk. And it was just like unreal. Experience, like being like, you know, we're going into lockdown. Why are we in lockdown?
And the people that would have tasked themselves with getting photographs, trying to get a picture of him. There would have been people trying, wouldn't there have been?
I feel like, in the sense of things like those, I remember, like, even though I was in 5th grade, I was still pretty present on, like, social media and stuff like that. So I remember seeing a video of someone actually, like, inside Parliament videoing this man, like shooting.
Yes.
You know, there were people that had cameras and phones that were like actually capturing them.
Right.
As, you know, in the sense of, no matter what, like, I feel like everything, like, you know, there was so much coverage on the convoy from every aspect, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Oh,
like,
yes.
there was everything.
Oh, yeah. We're not expressing our opinions either politically or folks.
Oh, like, we're
not at all.
No, we're so open, like, in the sense of our minds are just
I think we're just commenting on historical moments. Yeah, like how we were living during those times. That's all. So we're not criticizing anybody in any way.
No, never.
Everyone think how you want to think. I don't want to tell you, because that's a mess.
No, exactly.
So I want to ask you about when you're would you ever be a wildlife photographer? Could you do that? That's another type of photography.
Wildlife photography, definitely. I feel like wildlife photography would be something that I would very much be interested in. You know, I've never I've dabbled into it a little bit. I don't have the in the sense the long enough lens to be able to reach.
You need a long lens.
You need a pretty long lens, yeah.
Okay.
But you know, I've gotten pictures of some ducks and birds.
But would you be afraid to, like, get into the water and get crocodiles, or like would you be interested in, like, a safari? Oh,
safari, 100%. I totally would get in front of a tiger, or get in front of, you know, something, you know, just that exhilarating thrill of to get that picture. 100%.
Yeah. One of my teachers, his job at the Olympics was, this is hilarious to me. Yeah. But he was under a glass dome, or under a piece of glass, and the skiers were coming over this mogul, and he was laying down under the glass with the camera. So it was just, you know, the shot of them coming over this thing like this, and they're like, "Isn't this a great shot?" Like, he's
oh my goodness.
And, you know, people were trying to be really creative, and now you will see cameras on these lines, and now we have drones.
Yes.
So I also remember a guy who was the king of jibs. And shout out to the king of jibs. Because, again, I worked in television during a transitional period. Where we were transitioning from standard to full HD. And we were transitioning from many different technologies of editing, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, the king of jib. And he told me, I remember he was saying, I'm already selling all my jibs. He says, I'm investing in drones.
Yeah.
Because what he was doing for photography, besides working on TV shows, the way he was making the majority of his buck for his bank was by selling real estate photography via his drones. And that was how he was doing it during the time. And he was fully transitioning from the jibs, which I'm going to tell you, folks, watching a camera on a jib is a beautiful thing.
It is.
In motion, to see a guy or a girl in control of this jib and the way they can swing this thing around.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Like when
Yeah, it's so cool, especially like, steady cams, like when people like the manual steady cams where you have to adjust the weight on the bottom so that, the camera, and just seeing people walk around with like, these motion, like these like, before gimbals, it was crazy to see like how people could just move a camera in such a way that just, you wouldn't think a person could.
Yeah.
Especially with the equipment that they were using.
Yeah, the Steadicam stuff really took a step up again after or during my time in school.
Yeah.
I mean, so when I was in school, they introduced us a lot to dollies.
Okay.
Like a lot
Yep.
more to dollies as a tool.
Yeah.
Which I think are still used, but mostly in big movies.
Most people nowadays, like gimbals is like the go-to,
Right.
like, especially now with cameras being, more compact, moving away from the DSLR to the mirrorless side, the camera you're using right now probably weighs,
Nothing.
less
Yeah.
than my lens.
Yeah.
Together as a full kit.
Exactly.
So it's one of those things that, when it comes to video work and stuff, the lighter you can get or the more easier in terms of mobility you can get, it just gets easier and easier.
It changed so fast because so when I was going to work, there was a fellow, he was the DOP on a lot of projects here in Ottawa, Peter Warren.
Yep.
And Peter Warren was the creator of the Warren Dolly.
Okay.
So when I was in school, everyone's like, Warren Dolly, you're a Warren Dolly. I was like, okay, whatever. I ended up getting to work with Peter
there you go. That's
later
sick.
on
That's
the
awesome.
outside, right? And because he's a fantastic, he's legit a legendary DOP in the area.
Yeah.
And he started out doing like city news, but old school city news in Toronto.
Okay.
Jumping off the back of a truck chasing ambulances.
Wow.
Because during the time in the 80s, in the early 80s when he was doing this, like that was the thing with news. Everyone, action news. Wasn't just news anymore. The way you were getting the edge, the way city news was cutting in
No, exactly.
to CTV. And that was like, well, we get there first and we're on the scene of the crime. And, so he was that guy with that huge, heavy camera.
Yeah.
And so he legit had one shoulder bigger than the other.
Wow.
From the weight of that camera. And like, so he legit had this muscle that was bigger. And I remember just the changing so fast. Everyone's using little cameras. Now we're not using dollies anymore. We're not using, all these cool things that Peter had invented for the large camera use and patented, which is another thing you have to remember is, I think, as a photographer, is you can think creatively and patent that stuff. If you come up with a piece, something that helps you balance your camera or do something nifty. Hold on to that.
It's crazy, like, especially like in the sense of the realm of the world, especially what a lot of photographers have put out there for photographers. In the sense of, I think the biggest thing with photography is those little things that you might not think are needed could benefit you so much more in the long run, like the dollies, in the sense of before dollies, you would, a lot of people would put something smooth on the ground so they could drag it, easier. Whereas, now you have a dolly that, is smooth with wheels and can move around that, it's easier to be able to get,
The Warren Dolly was super portable and it was designed so you could just pick the whole tripod up, stick it on, and just go down. And the track was very portable and maneuverable. So, I mean, it was a cool system. And I loved working in TV, but it was such a weird time of transition between technologies that it's kind of weird,
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about hockey.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Once upon a time, you were a goalie, weren't you?
I was. I was a goalie. I've also played player as well. But I was majority of my ending of my hockey career.
Well, let's talk about when you were not a goalie. What position did you play?
So, if you want to go straight to the start, I started skating when I was 18 months old.
Whoa.
Yep. I was a pretty early skater and a pretty strong one at that. I used to play left wing.
Okay.
I started hockey at age 4. I played Timbits for a couple years and then, novice and Atom and Bantam and all that. And I just couldn't, I played defense majority of the ending of my player career. And I just couldn't get the hand-eye coordination and also skating at the same time.
Hmm.
So I would get frustrated, and
Yeah.
I was a pretty big goon. I
Travis!
used to get 5 or 6 penalties a game.
Travis, you are a goon?
Yeah.
You don't strike me that way.
Yeah, I used to get it a lot of penalties.
Did anyone ever try and bully you?
I was bullied a lot, yeah.
What?
But yeah, no, I think it was hard because I couldn't get myself in the sense to look up when I was skating. So I would look
Okay.
down and I'd have the puck, so someone would take it away from me and I would just start to get angry.
I got in a lot of trouble as a goalie.
Yeah.
I broke a guy's arm once. So what I like to do was everything that Dominic Hasek did.
Yeah.
So and Broder and Patrick Wan. This was my argument to the referee.
Yeah.
I did sliding poke check, but I did it to like a high degree of accuracy. So I might have done it like 7 or 8 times. And every time I hit the puck. So I never had a guy skate around me.
Yeah.
Because rule number 1, mofos, keep your head up and keep it on a swivel.
Yes.
Because if you come skating into my zone with the puck with your head down, I'm coming at you. And that was my coach was like, oh no, here he goes.
Yeah.
Here goes Warren. He's going to do it again.
I tried one a couple times, never really worked out for me.
Oh man.
I can say that I can definitely say that a couple players have skated back into the blue paint and their bits have been hit 1 or 2 times. So I was a pretty rough goalie too, but I loved revenge. You know,
Yeah.
I was a big goalie. You know, people called my nickname in hockey was the Wall.
Nice.
They called me the Wall.
Nice.
And you know, I played house league for Cumberland Dukes. I played a couple years of grads, but mostly house league. And you know,
which is great.
and seeing,
it was always competitive in Canada.
I'm not a huge competitive person, like in the sense of I enjoyed hockey. I didn't play hockey to win. I played hockey to enjoy. And like, you know, in the sense of, if we won, that's cool because I worked my ass off to get there. But it was never the factor of winning. It was always
I wanted to win and I wanted to get onto the A team real bad. And so I actually got on to competitive 1 year, but I had gone to goalie camp.
Okay.
Maybe 2 or 3 years in a row.
Barons?
I did, I did, well, first of all, I did the Ottawa Senators camps, and then I did the Jacques Martin camps.
Oh, I did the Ottawa.
Then I did Barry Madigan, and Barry taught the half pad slide.
Okay.
And so it was which is a form of the butterfly, but it's just teaching you the angles to slide in the butterfly to your posts and across the net.
Yep.
So nothing too wild, but I think it was great for my angles. And beating me low was very hard. And then I got Barry to work on my glove and my blocker because I'd have one-on-one sessions and he would say, what are we doing? And I'd say, look, man, I'm tired. I can't get beat high.
No, exactly.
I am a short goalie. If I get beat high as a short goalie, I'm not going to make the rep team.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I used to have a really weird glove. So normally when you're in your goalie stance, your thumb is kind of pointed up, where my thumb used to be like that. So my glove used to be weirdly positioned. So when I used to go to training camp, I remember my coach, skated over to me and he's like, get into your stance. So I got in my stance and he grabbed my glove and he went like that. And he said, keep it like that. Yeah. And I did. And it, in the sense of going to training and going to things, especially with hockey, I felt it helped me, in the sense it's a huge, huge thing. It's a no-brainer, For
me, every time I went to camp, I came back way better. Yeah. Like, because I wanted to get better. So I focused and I listened and I did the stretches. They give you the stretches to do and everything. I bought in and I worked hard.
Stretching. That's one thing.
Being flexible. I
used to be able to do the splits.
Right, me too.
And then I stopped stretching and then it's like...
Let's get it back, Travis. All right,
let's do it.
This is going to be our New Year's resolution. I can tell you right now, we're planning it in October, but we are going to be able to do the splits in 2025.
If you guys ever need a rent a goalie, we're here.
We're in. I need equipment, but
so do I. My parents sold my equipment. So.
I sold my equipment and I bought a guitar. And
that's a pretty good. Honestly, that's a pretty good.
I never got as good at guitar as I wanted to.
It's okay.
It's okay because then I started singing, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm a singer." Okay.
One of the 2 priciest things for equipment: guitar equipment and hockey equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you so much to Travis Reside for coming on today.
It's been my pleasure.
Travis, do you have any links that you want to share?
Yeah. So my photography account is at Reside. So
Okay, so I'll put it in the comments below.
if you want to. So
yes, I will.
It's Reside Photo. So my last name is my last name, and then probably my website. So it's just travisresidephotography.com, and basically
Awesome.
you just enter through there and you see kind of all my stuff on there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much for talking pictures and videos and everything.
No
We had
worries.
a great convo.
Oh, it was amazing, and that's the thing, especially with things like this, is you get to experience people, you get to learn more about people, especially when you're at gigs and stuff, you don't get to talk to people all that much, but
so true.
But you get to learn more about people, and that's the great thing about this podcast, and you're really, really making a huge impact on the Ottawa scene. So.
Thank you very much.
We all appreciate you, Warren.
Oh, thank you very, very much. Thank you. And thank you for watching.
Thank you so much.
And we're going to see you all next time on All Worn Out.
Yeah, peace out.
Bye-bye, everybody.